What's up, humans? You are listening to the What is Humans podcast with Shane Strunk and Dennis Kluba. Make sure to follow us on our social media pages. On Instagram at What is Humans Podcast, TikTok at What is Humans Podcast, and YouTube at What is Humans Podcast. Today, Dennis and I are discussing time well spent. Enjoy. Hey.
You're listening to the What is Humans podcast. If this is your first time listening, this is a personal development podcast with Shane Strunk and myself, Dennis Kluba, where we share conversations about our daily life and hope that we can learn some things through those conversations. Hopefully you at home can also, apply it to your own lives and improve upon yourself as well. And most importantly, we are experts in almost nothing.
What's up, man?
Nothing much. Just kind of a little bit of a crazy morning here, but that's what keeps it interesting,
Yeah, man. We're yin and yang here today. How we're dressed today. Complete opposites.
Exactly. Yeah. I threw on the denim fit. You're going grout fit.
I'm a little more professional. You're a little bit...
A little more creative. Like I'm in like an art teacher that got let go.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's get into it. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about the idea of time well spent. I think that it'll kind of piggyback well off of what we talked about last week in terms of Kevin Kelly kind of talking about this idea of goofing around and also the idea of being the only versus maybe trying to be the best at something that a lot of people do.
Yeah, this is interesting. And I think that a lot of this podcast has been around, you get out what you put in, the effort you put forward, but it's also, I think, important to think about the time around rest, the time around taking breaks, the time around goofing off, like you said, and I guess how that relates to what's best for us, for our goals, for our mental health, let's say.
Yeah, I think that something was really interesting to me as I was thinking about this topic, and a lot of it went, as it typically does, like to hobbies and work, but I also thought about, relationships as well and all these different facets of the idea of a lot of times we talk about, it's afterwards, it's the lesson of, oh, well, you learned something. There wasn't time wasted. It was, you learned something either about yourself or about, the world. And I think that the only way that we do that, and when I feel that the most, is when maybe I tried really hard, but I failed. Or I tried really hard and I succeeded, and it's something that I want to continue to do.
Yeah, you actually gave your best effort. And from giving your best effort, it almost gives you like a little bit of protection where, okay, if you did the best you could and you mess up, so what? If you did the best you did and you succeed, hell yeah.
Yeah. It is so much, it is such the cliche thing that your parents, that your coaches say to you and say, all you can do is try your hardest. And then at the end of the day, right, you'll be satisfied. You'll be happy. You left it all out on the field.
Yeah, totally. That's such a great perspective, and I wish I could just live my life by that, or it's so easily adopted. But what about, the times of our days where we need to unwind, relax, like that dead time, like what is time well spent? Like what does that truly mean, in this context though?
I think it's so much about value, and a lot of times I think that the goofing off or the the rest time that's necessary comes from it's the yin and yang of hard work. And a lot of times where I feel at odds, and I think that a lot of people do, is that maybe you didn't try your hardest at work, in your hobby, connecting with a partner, connecting with your friends, etc. But then you're giving yourself the leeway of rest that maybe you're resting too much. If it's right and everything's great, it goes both ways, right? If you're working too hard and you don't rest enough,
Totally.
you're burning out.
Yeah.
And so I think it's this balance between burnout and almost the coasting that you don't have time well spent if you're in one of those two camps.
Yeah. I've done this, I do this. I just see myself kind of in both worlds at once when I need to be fully present in one or the other.
Yeah.
If it is the working hard, or maybe it's I'm only giving my 80%, let's say on a workout, or the task at hand today, and my mind is on the hey, I'm tired, I'd rather be doing this, like I'd rather be seeing these friends, etc., where I am not fully able to be present for the work or for that friend if it's the opposite of fully being there. So I just see ourselves being not fully present in what we're doing, which can limit us in being able to do that effectively.
Yeah. Do you feel like we've talked about this more, and I think it's helped me become more self-aware through doing this for a couple years, but when you think about time, do you fear that you waste time, or are you excited about I have this time and I'm excited to see the opportunity that comes with it? Or do you feel like, oh man, I should have done more with my days, with my week, etc.?
I feel like, at least in my experience, I think I just relate to this a lot during school.
Yeah.
Like playing soccer and doing school at the same time is the most productive, let's say, semesters where I had the best grades.
Yeah.
Was my busiest times.
Yeah.
Was the times that I had a full schedule, very, regimented schedule of when I was supposed to be where, what I was supposed to be doing, everything from food to when you're napping, when you're those types of things. In that busiest time when I was the most productive. But in the times of, say it was the off season or there was just a less full schedule, I struggled in school. I didn't want to do the work. I didn't want to do the things that I needed to do. So I see that. I do that a lot now, of how important at least schedule is for me. And I don't think that is an across-the-board thing for everyone.
No.
But I think that we need to question, what is best for us. Is it tight schedules? Is it a lot of flexibility in your day?
Yeah.
Is it so kind of doing that self-awareness check-in of what's needed between where you can be flexible in your day and where you need to be very rigid is something that I need to question to be productive.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think that similarly, when I look back on experiences at times that I was either most productive or I learned the most about myself was when, and like you said, this is unique for every individual, but it was when I was, busy and I was almost pushing myself to expand what I thought was possible. And now I feel that as an adult, when you step outside of, maybe the regimented world of school or of sports, it can be easy to take that newfound time and not use it to the best of your ability. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be, doing a bunch of things, but there should be purpose behind, okay, if this weekend I want to go on a trip with my friends, you mentioned it before, you should need that trip and fully want to take advantage and embrace those people that you're around, the environment that you're in. As opposed to if you take, and we've been in this boat before, you almost have too many vacations lined up, or you've seen people over and over.
Yeah, you're just playing more than you should be working.
Exactly. Yeah. It becomes like, man, I feel like I didn't get the most out of that because I wasn't ready maybe at the time to unwind.
Yeah. I think it's something to, mentally of, I just relate to this. Say you're, cooking a meal. The act and the effort of buying the food, preparing the food, cooking the food, eating the food, the work that it takes to prepare and do that,
Yeah.
it's so much more rewarding. It just gives you more.
Yeah.
And that's the same across the board for just putting in effort for something.
Yeah.
The rewards of putting in effort, of doing a hard thing, is so much sweeter comparatively to having a reward or a dopamine hit that isn't well earned.
Yeah.
So it's just something to how we should spend our time is like, did we put in effort? Did we accomplish what we needed to accomplish?
Yeah.
Then we can allow ourselves to celebrate.
Yeah. What role do you think, because I always think, back, like we said, these learning moments in our lives, and then you talk about like going forward, does failures play in, and the ability to know when to do something different, when something isn't serving you and your time, right? Is there the time when, hey, this job or this relationship or this friend group or this hobby, it's no longer the time that I'm spending in it is not advantageous to me growing or becoming a better individual or a better person.
Yeah. I think that's really hard, and to truly like practice, or we can definitely practice it, but like truly implement, like, is it, I don't want to make the point or argue that we can't have vices or indulge in, say, a show or, a drink, or just like doing something fun that maybe you don't have like, oh, this is my passion, this is my career, just something fun that helps you unwind. I don't want to say that we should avoid all those things, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
However, I think that there is a little bit of discipline that we need to have around those things of like, maybe we don't need to go to that next bar.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to watch 3 shows a night. Like maybe we can save, certain things for certain times and plan for your times to unwind, to see a friend, to do something spontaneous and something that, isn't so driven by, say, work. So I think it's more, we just need to be a little more self-aware of what we're actually doing in our days, of how we are spending our time, I think is super important to answer that question.
Yeah. No, I think that self-awareness piece will be big inside of, our house section, and having the ability to recognize, okay, here's the moment where if it's something that I do regularly, I want to enjoy that thing. I want to be present in that moment, especially if it's if you're having a drink with friends, if you're watching Netflix, we can get so tied into, watching 6 shows and not even noticing what we watched or remembering that, right? And so it's really having this ability and discipline to say, okay, whether it's something bigger like a job or a work or a relationship, it's knowing similarly in small instances, all right, I'm not gaining anything new out of this right now. We're not having a new conversation that's stimulating me or this person's growth. Maybe we should just go home.
Yeah.
Maybe I should try something different, etc.
I love that.
Yeah.
What do you think for our house? How can we think about spending our time in a better manner?
I think what we always do, what we've been doing lately, is we kind of start with this idea of reflection and then kind of build from there, right? So I think, and this is something that you mentioned a little bit in the beginning, but step 1, right, when you're most productive, it was this regimented time-kept schedule. And I think that we need to look at, and it's kind of similar to almost taking stock of your finances or whatever, right? You look at your day and you're like, okay, in those 3 hours in the morning, did I take advantage of what that is? And that doesn't mean that you need to work out 3 times like some crazy person you see online. That could be sleeping more. That could be taking, a walk around the neighborhood,
Totally.
being present. So really, maybe it's just looking at your day, week, month, and saying, all right, in those hours, did I get something out of them? Or was I literally just doing nothing?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So take stock of your day. I think a important step in here is to look at that like without judgment. Like, I feel like, like you said, if it's online or if there's all these external things that we're trying to live up to, of being like your neighbor, of having things, of how much you make, etc. I think you need to look at yourself as your unique, where you are in your life, and look at that without judgment. So don't be ashamed of how you're currently spending your time, just because that won't be productive in changing any habits, of improving what you're doing within your time. So I think more of a give yourself grace so you can continue to take steps, if it's in nutrition, if it's in fitness, if it's in developing a deeper relationship, etc. I think just give yourself some grace when you're looking at that.
No, I completely agree. And I think that kind of leads well into like a step 3 of when you're analyzing the time that you have spent and maybe where you want to put more time into or, take time away. It truly is about looking at even past and future. What are the things you want to learn? What are the experiences that you want to have? It's so easy to look back and say, man, when I was playing soccer, I learned this about myself. Or a time that I thought I was doing nothing, I ended up learning so much about who I was and what I wanted to be. So maybe look at kind of the past and the future of, all right, here's the time I have. What are the things that I'm curious about, that I'm interested in, that I feel like will help me grow as a person?
Yeah, so I love that, of taking a look at, okay, in your past, something that you've enjoyed, something that you're good at, etc. And then also, what am I currently interested? What, gets me out of bed in the morning? What am I curious about? And using those two things kind of as a guide to, okay, this is where I want to spend my time.
Yes, completely.
Love it.
Yeah.
Cool. So why are we talking about time well spent?
I think for me, it was a bit of anxiety that I was feeling, especially coming off of whenever I visit home. I feel like it's a lot of reflection moments. And, I think as you begin to get older, you look at your life in segments, whether that's college or that's post-college, and then maybe it's your mid-20s, late 20s, et cetera. And something that can easily, for a lot of people, myself included, become fear or anxiety around, oh, I'm wasting time, or I have a limited amount of time and I'm not spending it correctly. For me, it's something I need to work on, of flipping that narrative and recognizing that I have gained so much perspective on myself and I've grown so much, but then also kind of that third step, how do I continue on that growth path going forward and know that I'm taking the right steps to use my time well?
I love that, man. Yeah, very similar. I just feel like these past 2 months I've been insanely busy, and I made the point of how much the busiest times during college was my most productive times. I don't believe that always to be true.
Yeah.
I'm questioning it myself right now.
Yeah.
Was I extremely productive these past 2 months? There's totally, I can say absolutely, but there's also a part of me that's like, maybe there was things I could have been doing differently. So I think that question is more of a practice to do often, if it's daily, if it's weekly, of journaling, etc., of seeing where I am. And that's just something I want to practice.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's go through a little bit of a recap. Today we talked about the idea of time well spent. Really, what does that mean? Did you grow? Did you have new experiences? But then also, what were the times that maybe in your past you feel like you did have time well spent? What were the habits that you were, embedding in your life to have those productive weeks, months, etc.? And is that true today?
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
Is that how you're living today?
Yes.
Yeah. And then we got into our house. Our first step was really just to take stock in how you're using your time.
Yeah.
Of what are you doing in your days, your weeks, the good, bad, and ugly. And then the second was really just to look at that without judgment. Of this is who you are, where you are today. We've all had our own past childhoods and experiences, and you have your own unique path that you're on. Yeah. So don't look at that with judgment. Otherwise, you won't be able to take steps to make any changes.
Completely.
And then our third was your point around reflecting kind of on the past of, what were things you were interested in doing, maybe things you're good at or things that you loved.
Yeah. And
kind of use that as hey, I'd like to spend more time here.
Yes.
And then the other side of that was, where are you today? What interests you? What are you curious about? What do you get out of bed for?
Yeah.
Use those things as hey, I'd like to spend more time here. This is important to me.
Completely. Then we got into the whys. I just talked a little bit about the fear and anxiety that comes with, looking back at time spent and if you did the right thing or if you were growing, and flipping that narrative into an opportunity to continue to follow new and also old passions that, like you said, get me up out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, love that. My why was just a reminder to reflect and ask these questions. It is important to see how you're doing, how well things are going. Yeah. But I need to give myself grace too, as I do this. Otherwise, I won't be able to make changes. And change is growth. So
completely.
I think that wraps another week of
What is Humans?
Thanks, guys.